It's finally time! The final episode of Battlebots before the round of 32. The episode where the robots have to give their final impressions before it's finally called. And I'm going to be reviewing this episode here today. Let's do this! Now the fight card looked quite interesting. We finally get to see more of Slammo, and again in the middle of the card is what would normally be considered a main event in my opinion between Whiplash and Tantrum. And of course, the main event, the Minotaur vs Witch Doctor rematch is finally here. People have been getting excited about this all season. Now first up, we got Lucky versus Cobalt, which was one I was very nervous for Lucky on. They are a certainty for the round of 32, but Cobalt is without a doubt going to be their toughest test to date. Cobalt, meanwhile, with one more win, absolutely would secure themselves a pretty nice spot on the round of 32. Now the fight begins, and with one mighty hit, they tear Lucky apart and cause an almighty explosion as they hit one of the tanks inside of Lucky. Lucky clearly still has some gas left in it as it manages to self-right, but Cobalt has messed them up, and after a push, Lucky finally dies. Now this was short, but oh so brutal an opening fight. This is what will make Cobalt a genuine threat for the top, the way that they can take out an opponent before they even know it. If they face a robot like Hydra and get under them, they could genuinely make a major upset here. Next up was Blip versus Banshee, and they waste no time really as both robots were already inside the box. Banshee weirdly enough had no wedgelets, which I found very strange given a flipper's greatest asset is their ground clearance. That's pretty much an essential part of what makes that design work. Apparently it was to get around Blip, but I thought that was a fool's errand because unless you're a robot that's as quick as Hypershock or Claw Viper, I don't think getting around is a very viable strategy, honestly. Blip meanwhile has this block on them which was apparently meant to help them get better flips in. I don't get it, but whatever. Now the fight starts and we get some initial wedges from Blip, but nothing substantial yet as the block seems to be a little too big and it's preventing them from wedging enough, given the fact that, because unlike a lot of other wedge flippers, Blip's flipper panel is like slightly recessed to allow for like the forks and whatnot. So they're not quite getting enough of a wedge in to allow for a flip. Banshee and Blip keep going for each other, but neither are able to do much as Banshee just can't get under Blip, and Blip can't seem to get any flips in, and their piano keys keep falling off as well. The fight continues with a bunch of rams from Blip, and finally some small flips to Banshee, and Banshee seems unable to self-right, though they don't have to worry as Blip flips them back. Blip finally gets some decent flips in at the end to close the fight out, and I am soundly unimpressed. The judges of course give it to Blip, but I don't think anyone could say they won in spirit after those performances. Maybe I'm spoiled seeing how Battlebots flippers usually perform alongside some of the amazing flippers in the UK scene, but this fight vastly underwhelmed me. I was hoping to see two robots throwing each other around. I just know both of these robots can do better, so this was a massive shame. The main event hype package comes a little bit earlier than usual, as they talk about Witch Doctor and Monsoon, how the controversial fight between two modern Battlebots legends caused the rules to be changed. And I appreciate how despite how they may feel about the fight, they make it clear that there's no animosity between the teams, which I think, what with how fans can be online, is a very important distinction to make. It's so easy for fans to wildly blow these kinds of moments out of proportion, so while it can be good for ratings to lean on the drama, it is good to not let it cloud the judgment of the team's character. Next up was Monsoon versus Death Roll. Now Monsoon came out with a new wedge for this fight, which normally I'd be all for, but I felt might have been a bad choice, as if it got hit by Death Roll, it could have ended up buckling and really could have put Monsoon in a potential disadvantage. Both of these robots are robots that mainly rely on their long reach and their powerful weapon, so I was interested to see how this would go. Now the fight begins and both robots get up to speed as Death Roll rushes over, but Monsoon ends up actually getting the initial hit, and Death Roll's drive is clearly damaged after that. And after a few more glancing blows, Death Roll is done! Now I did not expect that at all. I was expecting a much more back and forth fight, and I gotta say, I love Monsoon and I'm happy that they won. They got very lucky there, as given Death Roll's normal reliability, This could have been a lot more brutal. Not saying Monsoon couldn't have won, but definitely could have ended up with a lot more scrap metal in the arena. Still, a great fight, and I'm super happy for Monsoon in the end. Next up was Tantrum versus Whiplash, which I was already concerned because they were already giving us the reasons how Tantrum isn't ready yet. You know, it's like you're already trying to get us ready for the disappointment of the fight to come, which, spoiler alert, the buzzer sounds and both robots race out, with Whiplash coming straight in while Tantrum dances around. Tantrum gets the initial attacks in with some good punches, though Whiplash returns with a nice lift and spinner hit into the screws, flipping Tantrum over, where their Self-Rider again fails to perform due to the chain getting, dislodged or broken. I've heard some people call Tantrum a paper champion, and honestly, I think that's untrue and quite frankly disrespectful of all the effort the team has taken to get them as far as they did last season, but they definitely have fallen majorly from grace this time around. It's another disappointing fight as it was over before we knew it. It could have been vastly more entertaining if Tantrum could have just been able to self-right, as we could have seen a real good fight between two high-tier robots. Next up was Hijinks versus Switchback, which I had very low expectations heading into this one. I will say there were some nice and interesting attempts at armor between Switchback's anti-horizontal wedge and Hijinks' AR-500 ribs, both trying to do things in their own special way at dealing with each other's weapons. I liked it. Switchback races right over and jams up Hijinks' weapon as they get some nice hits in, flipping Hijinks over. Hijinks starts getting up to speed, but Switchback is undeterred, as Hijinks' drive also seems to be dying. At least they seem to be going a lot slower. But that doesn't matter, as with one almighty blow, the bar of Hijinks is ripped right off by Switchback. Holy cow! It's been a while since we got to see a short fight that was more of a great moment rather than a great match, but Switchback really got to show that weapon potential there with such an impressive shot. So I gotta give them that. That was probably their best moment the entire season. Next up was Slammo versus Double Tap, the last exhibition fight of the season, and the last fight before the main event. And one that I didn't think would last long, as if Slammo got a suplex in, Double Tap pretty much is done for. I don't think it can self-right, and it's certainly not invertible. Now Slammo races in as Double Tap gets up to speed and gets a light tap in before driving into the wall, stopping the spinner from getting back up to speed. Slammo gets some grabs in, but is unable to get that suplex in. Double Tap gets another shot in, and Slammo then grabs on and lifts Double Tap slightly. Double Tap seems to be having some trouble spinning up as the bar is a lot more slow, and Slammo's drive starts giving up. Double Tap's drive starts giving up, so we get them begging us not to change the channel. It's happened again. The fight's gotten so bad that they're begging us not to change the channel. We promise the main event's going to be awesome. Please stay with us. Now, to be fair in this case, both robots are just bumping into each other ineffectually. Double Tap, I feel, is getting more as it's not quite crab walking, but neither are really doing anything. Chris mentions about impressing, so that they can try and get into the real competition next time around, but I can tell you that neither is doing that in this fight. Double Tap's weapon does seem to briefly come back in the final 10 seconds as they get one last tap in, and it goes to the judges who give it to Double Tap, and man, that was another sad fight. Oh my god. There doesn't seem to have been a single great fight in this episode, and it all rests with the main event now, between Witch Doctor and Minotaur. Now the fight begins, and both go spinner to spinner, with Minotaur getting the upper hand, as they then pin Witch Doctor on the side of the arena, and get some sparks in as they keep digging into the side with their drum. Soon they bend and break off Witch Doctor's faults with some amazing shots, but Witch Doctor then gets an almighty blow on Minotaur, sending them flying, and it takes Minotaur a moment to recover. The two then go weapon to weapon again, which causes Minotaur to go flying, and Minotaur is now struggling as it begins smoking, though they do manage to push Witch Doctor back into the wall again. Witch Doctor begins smoking next, as Minotaur goes and pins them once more. Both robots are struggling to do much now, as both of their weapons give up the ghost. This would seemingly normally be Witch Doctors to win, what with the stronger drive, but both start crab walking as well and struggle to make meaningful pushes. Not for lack of trying, this isn't like the double tap slammo fight, where the robots are just unable to do much of anything. You can see that these two are really doing everything they can, and, you know, there's clearly a lot of effort to try and take control, even with the robots barely clinging on. The fight comes to a close though, and it goes to the judges. The judges end up giving it to Minotaur, which I think is absolutely deserved. But man, another disappointing fight. Both did the best they could given the circumstances, but it definitely sucked to see them both lose their weapons and part of their drive so quickly, given just how good this fight was, and of course the legendary performances these two teams have had. These two are, these robots are two modern Battlebots legends in my opinion, and I just know that they are capable of so much more. I did enjoy Marco and Andrea's peace talks though. Again, the online community could get way too hung up on some of this stuff, and I appreciate that, you know, they just made it very clear that there's no ill will. I kind of got the idea a lot of the time that there's very rarely ill will between the teams. You know, it's a competition, sure, but it's a community, there's friendships, you know. It's not that deep a lot of the time. They then reveal the brackets for the round of 32, but I'm saving that for another video because we're going to compare my predictions to how it actually shaped up on the show. Now, overall, this might have been the worst episode of the season, which I hate saying that, but God, this was so disappointing. Apart from big moments like Lucky vs Cobalt and Switchback vs Hijinks, each fight ended either too quickly or on a sour note as the robots couldn't deliver at the end due to the damage built up or just not being able to, you know, deliver their full potential. It really sucked, especially as we were getting so hyped up for the round of 32. Watching some of the robots that are going to be moving on failing to deliver, it just hurts, man. I don't know what to say. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified on more videos on the channel. Comment and let me know what you thought of this episode. Hopefully you liked it more than I did. If you did, I'd love to know why. You know, it's always good to get a nice, you know, respectful discussion down in the comment section. You can even tell me what your favourite match was. Share this video around with your friends because I'd love to get more eyes on the channel. And hey, stay tuned because, you know, hopefully in the next day or two, we'll get to talk about the round of 32. With that all being said, I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys!